Welcome to the Real Inspired Mama podcast, where real moms have real conversations about real life. I'm your host, Kenyah.
And I'm your host, Kayla.
And today we're just going to go do an overview about who we are, how we met, and our inspiration and purpose for the podcast, and just give you an overview of who we are together. So, Kayla, tell us your family structure, where you live.
Yes, I currently live in Texas. I am married to my amazing husband, Fuller. We've been married for almost 6 years, and we have 3 kids together. They are 12, 3, and our son just turned 2.
Nice. And I'm Kenyah. I'm married to my amazing husband, Tyler. We've been married 7 years and we have 2 kids. We have a 6-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. And I live in Georgia. So just taking us back a little bit, we've known each other probably like 6 years, 5.
Yeah.
We met in Washington, so both of us don't live where we met. So my husband Tyler was stationed in Washington. He was there for 7 years before we met, and then I lived in Washington my whole life until we moved for the first time. And then Kayla, tell us a little bit about how you and Fuller got to Washington.
Yeah, so Fuller also got stationed out in Washington, and we were there for about 3 years. We ended up being there.
Okay, yeah. So then Fuller and Tyler are cousins.
Yes.
Which is how we ended up connecting. I remember Tyler was like, "My cousin is, getting stationed here." And I'm like, "Okay, like, that's cool." And he was like, "Yeah, like, we're both from Camden." I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Yeah, he's, bringing his wife. Like, we should go over. He invited us to come over sometime." I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's cool. Like, we could go over there or whatever." We didn't really do much back then. So yeah, how did Javon tell you about us?
Same thing. Actually, I think it was his mom that told me. When we found out we were moving to Washington, we were going to be going out there. I think maybe it was him or his mom that was like, "Yeah, I have a cousin out there." Same thing. He's married. He told him we would get together. Once we got settled in. This was like before I had moved out there. So yeah, we heard the exact same thing.
Right, and I remember we had to wait until you got there until we came over.
Did y'all see Fuller before I got there? I think y'all did.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, I think so now that I think about it, because he was there for about 8 months before I got there.
Oh, yes, we did go see Fuller because I was really anticipating meeting you because it's like them and then me, So yes, we did go out there, and then I was like, "Oh, I think I was asking about you." And then fast forward, then we met. I feel like you probably hosted because you're very hospitable.
I feel like the first time I remember meeting you guys was 4th of July. I got there in June, and then, so yeah, like a few weeks after I got there.
And then you hosted 4th of July.
At our house, yeah. And then we went to that event.
The event that we walked to from on base.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, nice. Yes, so that was good.
What did you think when you first met me?
I felt like you were very outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like you were very easy to talk to, and I felt like I liked how, like, you were high on life. I feel like you were very, like, enthusiastic about life, like, "Oh, let's do this, like, let's plan adventures, like, let's go here, let's go there." And I was not like that. So I liked that about you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like you were very, like, just outgoing, very personable, and I feel like I can be around the right person, but I'm not back then, I wasn't naturally that way, so I feel like you got that out of me. So, yeah, what about you?
I can definitely agree. When I met you, I don't think I knew what it was because obviously I didn't know you, but I was like, I don't think she likes me. Like, you were just like, I feel like you were pretty just reserved. And again, I didn't think it was because of me because I hadn't done anything to make you feel that way. So I just kind of tried to like brush it off. But yeah, I do remember, the first several times actually that we hung out with you guys, that I was like, it wasn't that I didn't think you didn't like me, but there was something that I was sensing and I didn't know what it was. Yeah, I think you just being a little more reserved than I am. I'm pretty out there.
Absolutely. No, yeah, and I'm gonna say that was my toxic trait for sure. Um,
Ah.
I I used to be very, let's see, judgmental,
Mm,
very I didn't talk much about me. I was
mm.
very private, I was very reserved,
Yes.
and I think the main reason I was that way was, 1, unconsciously or like, once I learned that I was that way, it was very an unconscious act, and
Mm,
I think it was because I didn't know myself, like, I didn't know who I was as Kenya or as a person, so what do I have to offer? And I guess that probably goes back to childhood, like,
yeah,
like, not really having an identity to even bring into relationships, friendships, um, like, a whole 'nother thing is, like, I didn't know how to be a friend at all. Um, I feel like I didn't grow up with a lot of friends, and then, like, when I went to college, it was, like, hard for me to relate to people, stuff like that, very closed off, very reserved, but
okay.
now I'm like a social butterfly.
Yeah, so then that's exactly what I was picking up on. I have a really good sense of energies. And I know I was picking up on something, but I didn't know that's what it was. But now that you're saying that, I can agree that, wow, that makes sense with what I was
No.
feeling.
No, absolutely, and I didn't even get, like, this self-awareness aspect about me and probably, like, 2 years ago, honestly. Maybe, like,
Wow.
2.5 years ago, I was just, like, oblivious in a sense, like, Tyler would tell me, but I'm like, like, "I ain't like that, blah, blah, leave me alone," all, like,
Yeah.
but no, like, that was definitely one of my toxic traits for sure.
Yeah. And I can say for me, to kind of connect what you were feeling from me, that was probably the most confident I've ever been in my life. Like that was
Mhm.
my peak confidence for sure. Like I had found myself, right? Like prior to meeting Fuller, found my identity, who I was, very confident in that as well. And so I think that is what you were sensing and picking up on was like, yeah, just super excited to finally feel happy and comfortable and confident with who I was as a person.
No, yeah, and I think one thing that you touched on was you felt like I didn't like you, but you knew it wasn't you because you didn't do anything. So I
Yeah,
feel like that's wisdom, and I feel like there's a lot of times where with somebody or around somebody, and we're like, "Dang, why she got an attitude? Like, why I didn't do nothing
yeah,
to her." But honestly, we really have to have the understanding and the intellect to realize they probably have something internal going on. It has nothing to do with you.
for sure. And don't get me wrong, girl. I did. I told Fuller, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think she likes me. Like after the first couple of times, I'm like, I don't know. Like I was just hesitant for sure. I didn't let it show.
At
You
all.
wouldn't have known that.
No.
But because I think I just had to, yeah, exactly remind myself, like, I don't think it's you. I think
Mm-mm.
she has some, self healing. I didn't know that at the time, but
Yeah,
now that you say that, like, yeah, that's probably what that was.
absolutely, and I think honestly another thing for me was, Camden. So, having a baby
Mm.
was wait, he was, like, 1.
I was just gonna say he had just turned 1 in March. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I was a very much so, like, a helicopter mom, like, "We need to
Mm.
stick to the schedule. No, we can't go do this. Like, what about nap time? Like, he can't eat this. Like, what are we gonna do?" I was so into making sure Camden had this perfect world in a sense that
Yeah.
I didn't focus on me at all, like, back then at all. Uh,
Yeah.
and then, of course, still trying to be a good wife and really trying to balance all of that. And that time in my life, it was very, like, a lot going on. Absolutely nothing
Yeah.
to do with you. That's
No, yeah,
me.
I think I definitely, I realized after, it didn't take much long after those first couple of times, for me to realize like, no, like she's really sweet. She's so sweet. We're actually very much alike. There were definitely, things that I noticed like, oh, we are more alike than I thought,
It definitely took me some time warming up. Now, it doesn't take me
Yeah.
time at all. I'm like,
Wow.
"Yes, here I am,
That's
and
so
here I am,
good.
blah, blah, blah." Which actually honestly brings us to what we're doing now and what we're talking about in one of our goals and inspirations for this podcast. For me, after, going for I would say about 2.5 years, I was, like, more healed than I have ever been in my adult life. And just recently, I would say probably the past year, I was really like, okay, I got this. Like, I know who I am. This is what this, and this. I didn't have no shame in where I came from. I didn't have any shame in my past. I did my schooling, studying for my CPA exams, really feeling overwhelmed, bogged down. And I just started listening to podcasts myself. And I was like, wow, like these podcasts are like really inspirational. Like, wow, like I'm not the only one going through this in like my marriage or personally or whatever it was. So I would listen to these podcasts when I was driving to work. I was like, wow, like if people are sharing this story about like themselves, like I could share my story and make a difference and be inspirational. Um, and like kind of give like hope or light or whatever it is. Because I think there's so much transformation and transparency that we could, bring to people.
Yes.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely agree. I feel like it was actually social media that kind of brought that out of me after going through, some of the hardships that I had faced. Snapchat, where I realized I got a pretty quick following, and pretty quickly people would like message me like, oh my gosh, like you're so inspirational, or, whatever they would say, right? That's when I was started to be like, wow, like I love helping people. I always knew that it was natural, but just being inspiring from my testimony and my hardships as well, definitely started more so, yeah, in my adulthood once I was healed also. um so yeah, podcasting is pretty new for me. I didn't start listening to podcasts till about a year and a half ago.
Similar, probably maybe 2-ish years ago. What did you used to post on your Snapchat, like, that was inspirational?
Just my life, just my life, being a single mom, work,
Mhm.
fun things I would do with Abby. I love being outdoors, love, like you said, just doing the most, right? Adventurous. So yeah, just our adventures and packing her snacks, cutting up her fruit, like, you know what I mean? Like all the aesthetically pleasing things that you can think of. And people will be like pretty inspired by that. So
Okay,
yeah, that's
okay, so
how it
no, that's awesome, that makes sense because that's what I'm trying to do now.
started.
Like,
Yay.
trying to get a following and stuff, because honestly, this whole social media thing is new to me. As you know, of course, we're Facebook friends. You don't see anything from me.
Yeah.
I didn't have an Instagram. I just got an Instagram. It's because I just lived this like private life. Like I didn't want anybody to be in my business. Like I didn't want nobody to know what I was doing, where I was moving. But yeah, things changed. Now I don't care at all. And obviously, we're doing this, and I think a big part for both of us in this journey is the role that God played in putting this on our heart. I'll let you start. Like, what did that look like for you? Like, how did you know maybe you should do a podcast, or maybe like this was like your next thing or your next step in life?
Yeah. So for me, I feel like I started my business about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. And right away, I was fulfilled. I mean, pretty quickly, weeks. I mean, maybe even a week into starting my business and the clients started coming in. I realized this is my calling. My calling is to help people. I started with body sculpting. So helping people transform their bodies, getting to a place of being more comfortable in their skins, or after having kids, or after losing weight or wanting to lose weight, right? And so that's where it started pretty quickly. I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. And then, time went on. I eventually added more services to my business. I started doing lashes. I went to school for lashes, got my license, started doing tattoos, got my license, like did that whole, adding services to that. And it all felt great. It felt great. It felt like, okay, this is good. I love it. I love pouring into people. I would say about 6 months ago. I had just started tattooing, which again, absolutely loved it. Felt alive when I started it. Um, but I felt pretty quickly after that, like, you know what? Like, I feel like I'm meant to reach a larger audience, not just the one-on-one that I have with my clients, which I love. But I don't know. I can't really explain it other than it was just like this thought and this feeling like I feel like I'm meant to do something bigger, but I didn't know what. I didn't know what it was. I knew that it wasn't, I kept feel like God kept putting it on my heart, right? Like it's not social media. It's not social media. I already have a following on Snapchat. I have a following on Instagram. I have Facebook. I wouldn't say a following. That's more just like friends and family. Um, but definitely felt right away like it's not any of those platforms. But I still didn't know what it was. I would say, oh, I know. I
April.
got invited to speak at a business uh, entrepreneurship, gathering, a conference that was being held here in Texas, and that was my very first time speaking in front of an audience, like as a business owner. And after I finished that day, I was electric. I mean, I was just so high off of that feeling that it brought me of speaking, public speaking. So then I started to think, this was like in April, like, I think this is it. I think it's public speaking. And, you know, from there, it kind of evolved like, I wonder if I should do a podcast. And then it's like, I don't think so. I don't think that's what it was. I kind of shrugged it off. And then you texted me.
Okay, and here I am. Okay, cool. Love that. Yeah. So I guess even to go a little bit further back for me, you mentioned like you were feeling so fulfilled in what you were doing in regards to your entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
which is great. And I guess I feel like for me, when I was teaching, I felt really fulfilled. I felt like I was making a difference in these little high school, kids' lives. I was teaching them math. I was trying to, relate, especially to the Black students, like being that, example, like you could do it too. And I felt fulfilled, but
Yeah.
that faded as I went on, and then I ended up, switching careers, and then getting into this accounting career. I was like, this is not it. This is not it at all. Um,
So
yeah,
different, right? Because that's a lot more independent.
independent adults,
Yeah,
desk,
true.
computer, getting off at 5 p.m., working during the summer. So different. Like, I couldn't even be purposeful over the summer with my kids. Like, this was just it just wasn't it. I was like, "Man, maybe I made a mistake." But no, I'm not gonna say a mistake, but I felt like there's more that I should have been doing or that I need to be doing to feel fulfilled, to feel purposeful. So I started my CPA exams was a whole nother story, but I started working September. So working pretty, long hours, whatever, in person, driving to Atlanta, about an hour drive. Um, I would listen to podcasts and stuff, but I was like, man, like this is too much. Like I need to go back to teaching, like I consider teaching like almost 2 months into my, career. I was like, okay, I could go back to teaching, but I just wasted all of this time, putting in the work to my accounting career. So I can't, I mean, I could go, but like not yet. So I was just like, going back and forth. And then like as time went on, like I was still at my same job, working crazy hours. And I was like, and towards the end of my first busy season, I was like, maybe I should start my own business. Like, I'm going to start my own business. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to start a business, how am I going to get clients? And I'm like, okay, to get clients, I need a social media following. So I'm like sitting here talking to Tyler. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a business, but in order to start a business, I need social media following. I need to start now so I could have my following by the time I have my CPA license so I can start my business. And then something came upon me. I was like, I should start a podcast. I was like, I could
So
start a
yours was
podcast.
clear right from that point.
Right at the end of this busy season, I was like, I could start a podcast. Yeah, exactly. I was like, it's a podcast. That's exactly what it was. And I was like, okay, I could because what I just went through in that past like September to February was crazy. Like my hours, like the things that I was experiencing, it was ridiculous, you know? I was like, this was
Yeah.
just so unnatural, like, for us to have to spend all this time away from our kids and all of this stuff. It was hard. So, you know, the real working mom is like, okay, being a working mom and really talking about, like, how hard it is was, like, one of my things. But then I'm like, so then I'm like, "How am I gonna start a podcast? I don't have time because I work too much." But
Yeah.
then, like, so I've been applying for jobs, you know, like, passively, not really thinking I'm gonna get anything, and then I end up applying for this job, talking to a recruiter. Within 1 week, I get a new job of this podcast idea, and I'm like, "Wow, God bless me with this new job, so I have time to do this podcast." It was like a huge revelation. I'm like, "Okay, so podcast, I didn't have time. Boom, God, new job. Okay, perfect. I have time now." So I legit, I was planning. I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna start this podcast." I was telling people, I'm like, "I'm gonna start a podcast. Like, you wanna be my guest?" I was trying to make a framework, all of this stuff. I started right away, making objectives, trying
And
to
this
get
is all
guests.
back in February?
Yeah, February, March.
Okay.
And then so it was, like, pretty much all of March, and then I started my new job, and I was like, "Ooh, I love my new job, like, this is great, I have time." So, like, my podcast idea kinda left me because I was, like, so into my new job. It was only, like, a month that it left me. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna move up the ladder, like, this is great, I love my job." And I'm like, "Yeah, this isn't it." I still wasn't feeling fulfilled, I wasn't feeling purposeful, so I'm like, "Let me get back to my podcast idea." I was just off of it for about a month. I get back on and I'm just like, okay, like moms, I need to like reach out to moms, like share their story. And then I reached out to a group of moms, like variety of moms that I knew between Washington, Arizona, and then now here. I reached out to you and I was thinking about it. I was like, no, because I don't know if Kayla, I don't know. But I'm just, oh, let me reach out, see how she's doing or
Wait, what
whatever.
were you doubting? You didn't know if I would be interested or if I had
Right.
time or okay.
Probably interested
Okay.
because we haven't talked, you know, for so
Yeah, we haven't
long.
talked in a long time.
Like
We
we talk every
just to
now
give
and then.
yeah, I was just say just to give context, I feel like we would, text like definitely for sure around Christmas every year.
Yeah, and then we
Like
did
since
hang out last Christmas?
not this past Christmas, the Christmas
Christmas
before when we went
before we
back
met
to
up.
Georgia, yeah, and visited. So yeah, very much like maybe special occasions, but definitely Christmas holidays at the very minimum, right?
Very infrequent, like,
Yeah.
not consistent. So then I'm like, "Huh," I was like, "Let me message her, it's been a while." But then I was messaging you because Tyler was like, um, "We're
Let's
supposed
go
to
to
go."
Texas.
Right, "We're supposed to go to Texas, you know, we're supposed to go to Texas to see Kayla and Devon." I was like, "Okay, like, when?" And he was like, "July." So I was like, "Okay, let me text Kayla to see when we could actually go." And at the same time I'm texting you, I'm texting other moms. And then we started talking about, like, other things, and I'm like, "Maybe I should bring it up to her." But I was honestly very hesitant. I was like, "No, I'm not gonna ask her." And then I was like someone was just like, "Just ask her, like, what's the worst thing she could say is no?" So I was like, "Okay, let me just ask her." And then you were like, "Me too, podcast, I wanna do it too." I'm like, "Wow, this is great." Like, we're sitting here, like, collaborating instantly about a podcast, and I'm like, "Okay, maybe this is it." And then guess what happened after that?
We started planning our very first recording. We decided
No, we
right
were
away.
do separate.
Yeah, yeah. Our
Oh,
first
all
recording,
first
like separate.
recording.
Like I was gonna be, you were gonna interview me, and then it's kind of funny because you're like, right when you started talking about it to me, I'm like, that's so crazy because I feel like I thought about podcasting, but I didn't think enough to pursue it or even research it. Like, how do you get started? I knew nothing about it. So as you would ask me, like, what's your name? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a name. And then you're like, well, I don't remember. You were asking me just like series of questions that I had no answer to, and there was times when I would tell you straight up like I have no idea. I haven't even thought about that. And then there was questions that you asked me, and I'm like, well, let me think about that right now. And then I'm like, the name is, I texted you like some ideas. So yeah, that we decided to schedule
Yep,
our first recording where you would be interviewing me on
for
your
my
podcast.
podcast, yep.
Yeah.
And just, like, a little backstory is, like, I knew I needed a host or a co-host. I needed somebody, like, right off the rip. I'm like, "I can't do this. I don't know how to work social media. I don't know how to make a reel. I don't know nothing about Instagram. Like, I'm gonna need a co-host. I need somebody to hold me accountable." But I didn't really have anybody, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay, I gotta do this. This has to be what I do." Yeah, just a little caveat. Like I was like, I need a host right off the rip. I was like, I need a host, but I was like,
Before you had asked me?
way before, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, way before, because I asked like this other girl, and our schedules were too like conflicting. So I was like, okay, I think I could just roll with it and kind of it's kind of like starting a business from scratch. Like let me build it. I got this. Like you kind of like you can do anything you put your mind to is kind of the
Yeah,
mindset I had. So I was like, okay, I got this. But then yes, so then we were gonna record our first episode, and we did.
we
Uh,
did.
and then what?
You also had that same day somebody else scheduled. So
Right.
we did ours. That was your very first one. I was your first one you recorded.
Yep.
We did it. It went great. There's a little bit of things that we talked about. We wanted to fix or change.
Right.
Immediately after we finished, you recorded another one. So then you sent me both of them and asked me, what do you think? How do you think you did? What do you feel about yours? And then also about your second one that you had
Right. And then I think just bigger picture, it's kind of hard, to get multiple moms, to record. So I was like, maybe I'm just gonna ride solo, I'm just gonna talk about things that I know, based off of my experiences, my life, and when I could like include other moms and maybe do a few with you, like outside of your own podcast you were recording. And
Yeah.
then we were talking and I was telling you this. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna ride solo. I'm driving home. And then you're like, yeah, like that, that makes sense. And then you call me back.
I did. When we got off, because when you're telling me this right away, I'm like, in my head, you should tell her that y'all should do it together. But
My
then
head too.
right away, I'm like, no, don't say that, because this is her thing. Maybe what if she's like, no, this is my baby, and she doesn't want to tell me that, and she wants to make this something that is just hers and hers only.
Right.
So I didn't say anything.
That
We
is
hung up.
right.
And I explained to Fuller. Fuller was sitting right next to me. And I'm like, yeah, Kenya said that she's going to, she's kind of revamped her idea. She thinks that she's going to just do it by herself. And he's like, y'all, just casually, he was eating dinner. He had just gotten home. He's like, y'all should do it together. And I'm like, you think so?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, like no big deal to him at all. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm scared. I don't want to ask her. He's like, what do you mean? Just ask her. I'm like, no. And I explained to him, like, I don't want her to feel like she has to say yes or, And he was like, babe, just ask her. Here, I'll ask her. Call her and I'll ask her. And so I was like, okay. So I called you. And what did I say?
You're like, what if, I don't know exactly, but pretty much, what if we do it together? I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, please. Literally the night before or after I recorded year two, and I was talking to Tyler. I'm like, I need a host. I can't do it solo. And he was like, Kayla. And I'm like, yeah, but she's trying to do her own. And, she lives in Texas. I don't know if that'll work. And he was like, I think you and Kayla do great. Like, you guys are both open. You guys both don't care about talking about nothing. And then when we were having that conversation and you were thinking you wanted to ask me, I was like, I want to ask her, but I'm not. It was crazy.
So
And then,
funny.
thanks, Fuller. Shout out, Fuller.
Shout out to Fuller. And the guys, just period. They're not overthinkers like we are.
Exactly. And then I was like, yes. And then we started planning from there. And here we are.
Yeah, it spiraled pretty quickly. We were both really excited about it.
Yes. So I guess we could just give a snapshot of like each of our purposes, like as a combination of, I feel like for me, like what I want the podcast to be is like a safe space for us to be vulnerable and to be able to share our stories in hopes to relate to other moms where they feel like their feelings are validated, their experiences are validated. More than anything, allow them to understand that they're not alone in, life.
For sure. No,
Yeah.
that's so good. I can definitely agree. I think for me, part of that came in my business, as I mentioned, right? Like just naturally being in the beauty industry, like helping people feel good about themselves, inspiring them to, want to do better and be better. So I think right early on, I knew like, okay, I have this business, but this tugging on my heart that God is putting on me, like I knew it was God. Because first of all, business started to slow down for me. And so that's when it was like, gosh, like, but I also knew it was not monetary. Like God put it on my heart right away. It's not monetary. It's not monetary. And so, anyways, months passed by. And then when we started talking about it, that's when I was like, my whole business in general is just to inspire. I mean, the name of my business is Inspire Beauty and Wellness. And so, yeah, I feel like that's what my mission was when I started to think about my own solo podcast was what do I want this to be? I want it to be for moms. I want it to be for moms who, you know, are going through seasons of being single or, you know, being even married or whatever that looks like, right? Divorced. I just knew that I wanted to inspire moms to be the best versions of themselves. And I didn't know exactly how, but I think you've helped me with that. I think your thought process, it helps me to get closer and closer to that for sure.
Oh, yes, that's so sweet. Yes, I think together we could definitely make a huge impact for moms across the world from, our various experiences. And we have some similarities, but we also have differences, and I also think just different perspectives,
Mm.
different journeys, using those and colliding those and really bringing the best out of our podcast. And of course, interviewing moms, when we see fit or whoever, willing to share their story. Absolutely open to that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely, like you said, a safe space. I think one of our similarities is we're not scared to talk about our past. We're not scared to talk about things that we've gone through. I feel like for me personally, I know that's why I went through those things because God does want me to share my story and my testimony. And, ultimately, it's always, brings us back to His word for His glory. And that was one of my prayers for this too, right? Like I prayed over the last few months because for me, mine wasn't as clear as yours. So I had to do a lot of like asking God, like, please show me what is it that you want me to do? I hear you, I feel you, but I'm having a really hard time. What is it like? Seeing exactly
Right, right.
what it was that He wanted me to do.
Right, and I feel like between, like, the 2 of us and our husbands, like, we got so much confirmation, you know? Like, "Oh, you confirmed this. Okay, so it must be God," or, "Fuller told you this," or "Tyler told me this," and I feel like in all of it, it's so much confirmation, like, that we're on the right path, that this purpose and the goal is, to give God glory and, make sure He's the center of focus of it and really honoring what He put on our hearts to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah,
Exactly.
confirmation.
Yes, for sure. So we're so glad you guys are here. We're so glad you all are listening. I feel like I was called to do this, and I know Kenya, you feel the same. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited. I'm excited for this new adventure. I think that if we can help, even if it's just one person, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it's just one person to help them, have some self realization or just to feel inspired, right? To to be the best version of themselves. I think that we'll accomplish what we want.
Right. When can they expect to see an episode?
That's a good question. We plan to release a new episode every Wednesday. We will also have a YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel where you will get the notifications of when we post.
And our Instagram is Real Inspired Mama. Our YouTube channel is Real Inspired Mama. So definitely stay tuned.
Yay. Make sure you turn on your notifications. Make sure that you come ready to be inspired. And we hope really great things out of this. So we're excited and we cannot wait to share our journeys with you all and get some inspiration going.
Yes. What are the next couple episodes about?
Great. So the next couple episodes, you can expect to learn more about me and about Kenya, our journeys, and what that looked like for us.
Yes, and it's just up from there.
Yay! Super excited.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, guys.